Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Zach. Here we talk about overlanding, gear, builds, DIY, all sorts of stuff related to modifying your vehicle, getting out there, adventuring in the outdoors. Today, we are going to be talking about everything I went through after I re-geared my 4Runner. So whether you're someone out there who's on 33s, has a little bit of extra cash, and you want to go to 456s, maybe you're someone who's on 33s to 35s, and you're thinking about going to a supercharger, and you're also maybe considering running 456s. Maybe you're somebody with a Tacoma and you're trying to run 35s and you're going to run 529s. Maybe you're someone with a 4Runner like myself and you're going to be running 488s. All these different gear ratio changes are some of the ones that are on kind of the typical horizon of people looking to re-gear. I'm going to talk you through everything I've done so far to break in my gears, the tune that I did, and everything in between. So if you like what I'm doing with the channel, or you just like this sort of content, please consider subscribing. It helps me out, helps me be able to continue to make more content like this. I want to give a big shout out to Sidco 4x4 and Running for Tacos. Both of them help support me in doing this re-gear project. Running for Tacos sells a ton of different gear, and I got these gears from their website. Go check them out. I'll have my gears linked down below, the 488s that I ordered, and they're Revolution gears. And then I had all the work done out at Sidco 4x4 in Glencoe, Minnesota. If you're local to the area, I've got a discount code for them, 5% off your entire job. That includes parts and labor. If you just mentioned me, Overland Engineer, OVLDENG. So if you're in the market for doing something like this and you're in the Minnesota area, highly recommend you check out Sidco 4x4. But with that being said, let's first jump into some of the fluids you're gonna need, some of the materials you're gonna need, and then sort of the break-in process. Then after we're done with that, we'll talk about what the fluid kind of looks like over at Sidco 4x4. And then lastly, we'll talk about the tune that I got. And yeah, that'll kind of be the process of the video. So let's jump right in. Quickly before the video starts, I just want to also give this other shout out. So I'm on the fence as to whether I'm going to attend the More Expo, which is kind of a Midwest Overland Expo. And I can actually get you all discounted tickets if you're going to that event. So if you want a 10% discount, check out the link down in the description below, because I've been to the More Expo last year. It grows every single year and it's getting quite massive. And yeah, I might actually consider coming this year just as sort of like an influencer type person, because I can't be in a booth for the entirety of the day, but I think I could come down on Saturday. So if that's something that you all want to, see my rig or whatever, comment down below. Maybe that'll motivate me to go a little bit more. All right, so there's a couple of things that you're gonna do when you re-gear your vehicle. We'll talk about fluids in a little bit, kind of a controversial topic depending upon what sort of fluids you think are best. But before we do that, I'm gonna talk you through sort of the whole order of everything. So you drive out to wherever you're gonna get your vehicle re-geared. Now, some shops offer what's called a REM coating. That's what Premier West does out in Riverside, California. Some places will offer this. And so what this is it's basically just a special coating on the gears that claim that you don't need to do any sort of break-in period whatsoever. I don't have experience with these. I've been really cautious about the gear break-in process. So I think I would maybe go through these steps even though I got the REM coating. And the REM coating I would have just gotten as like another precaution that the gears don't end up ringing or making weird noises or whining. But that is an option out there. I will say this as well. I don't know a ton about the manufacturing process of gears, but something tells me that kind of how they're designed, how they're broken in, and everything in between is all sort of a secret sauce. And so I was trying to find information about like how specific gears are made, what is done before you get them in your hands, all these sorts of things. I didn't find a lot of information. I was able to talk to someone really helpful at Revolution Gears, and they basically explained to me that they had come from Yukon. And basically he said that at Yukon they used to pre-run their gears, which from my understanding is probably some sort of process where they're heating and cooling the gears, I think, to kind of pre-break them in so that they don't change shape a lot once you start running them. That's kind of how I understand it, but essentially they would like test run the gears before they were ever installed. And then he said after he left Yukon, you know, he couldn't speak to what they do nowadays, but at Revolution Gears, they've done the same thing. So I think a lot of gear manufacturers will sort of pre-run their gears, which from what I can tell kind of sounds like they're doing a bit of a pre-break-in sort of process where they run the gears. So that's nice. Depending upon the gears you're buying, I think Revolution Gears and Yukon Gears will both have some sort of setup like that. But what happens is when they ship you your gears, they come in this like black anodized coating or something like that. I think it's a mixture of maybe being some sort of preventative maintenance sort of coating on it, but also to prevent it from rusting or doing some other things while in transport. I don't know exactly why they put it on, but there's this like darker coating, and that fluid comes off when you do the gear fluid change at 500 miles. We'll talk a little bit about that later. All that to being said, it's still important that we do the break-in period because it will also help to remove some of that coating. So what is the break-in period? Basically what it is, okay, so for this 500-mile break-in period, what are you supposed to do within that time frame? This is my understanding. I try to look at trucks, cars, all kinds of stuff and try and sort of bring all of that information together. Heavily recommend you read the instructions for your particular gear set, but this is kind of what I found through doing my own research, and so I'm trying to kind of summarize it here for you. That is what my logic was based on. So basically, for the first 3 trips you take with the vehicle after it has been re-geared, it's a 15 to 20 minute drive. Stop and go traffic is okay, but it can't be like stop, wait. What you're wanting to do is you're wanting to heat up the gears and then cool them off in a very controlled manner. And so what you do for those first 15 to 20 minute drives is you can only go up to 45 miles per hour. And what this allows you to do is basically heat up those gears for that 15 to 20 minutes. So that's roughly, you know, 10 minutes away from home, 10 minutes back. And that's going to heat it up. You only go up to 45 miles per hour, and then you park your vehicle. It's some people say 20, some people say 30. Remember, this is going to be very dependent on the temperature of the area you live. So if you live in a hot climate versus cold climate, it's going to cool off slower or faster. I did over an hour, and I'm here in the winter here in Minnesota, just because I want to be very sure. So that's the first 3 trips. Then after that, you do 3 more trips with the exact same duration, so 15 to 20 minutes, but you can go up to 65 miles per hour. Make sure you do that, 15, 20 minute drive, you come back home, you park the vehicle, let it completely cool down. Throughout this process, the one thing that Trevor at Sidco 4x4 mentioned to me is what you could do is when you go out for your drive and you come back, crawl under your vehicle and put your hand on the differential. What he was saying to me is like, when you touch a differential, it should be, 80, 90, 100 degrees, something that you can put your hand on and you're like, ooh, that's warm, but you're not going to pull your hand away immediately. If your gears were turning really hard or there's something wrong going on with how the gears are set up, likely they're going to be rubbing a lot harder and it's going to heat the diff up a lot more and start heating up that fluid as well. And it will be hot to the touch, and you'll know for sure that that is a bad sign. So within those first couple of trips you're taking that are going up to 45 miles per hour, it's probably a good idea to crawl into there and check it. So again, what we're doing here is we're trying to heat up the gears and cool them down. This helps to make the gears harder, helps to break them in, helps to not heat up the fluid too much as we're sort of breaking down all kinds of things that are coming off of the gears, because we want this fluid to still stay in good shape despite all this kind of crap getting dumped into the gear fluid. So that's kind of the process. Another thing that I learned, and this is totally up for debate, but the guy at Revolution Gears actually really recommended non-synthetic oils because he was under the impression that these heat up and cool down in a much more uniform manner, or at least in the manner that these gears have been designed to work with. And so he recommended running this 80W90 gear oil. And I don't remember the number exactly. I'll put it up on the screen for the weights. But there is a version of this that you would use in a more heavy duty truck. So now, okay, we've done 6 trips of 15 to 20 minutes. So now what we're gonna do is that whole time you should have been driving quite smooth. I tried to keep it under 2,000 RPMs, but maybe that's hard to do depending upon your gear ratio. I just tried to drive as smooth as I could, like the slow person on the road that maybe frustrates you. You just drive really, really easy. Then after that, it was 50 minutes to an hour, like under 45, 50 miles was the max trip I would do, and then I would park the vehicle. So, you know, I could drive to work and back, or, you know, run an errand, whatever, drive somewhere 45 minutes away and then run the errand and then let it cool down and then come back. Whatever it was, I would do something like that up until the 500 mile mark. So what we're just trying to do here is put a little bit longer miles on the vehicle, and this is what I found to be a good way to do this. So in the 4Runner's case, I've got 2-wheel drive and then a 4-wheel drive, 4 high and 4 low. Some of you out there may have an all-time 4-wheel drive, and that's a nice case scenario because you have no other option. For me, I didn't want to drive 4-wheel drive on tar because I was a little worried it'd be hard on the gears on break-in. So thankfully we had a couple snowstorms where I could drive around on the roads and try and slowly break in the 4-wheel drive. But again, we're going to do all of these same slow and then up to 60 miles an hour and then only max 1 hour trips once you're in 4-wheel drive. So that break-in period at the beginning was all I was talking about was 2-wheel drive. If you're lucky enough to do 4-wheel drive for all these because you live in like only snowy roads or you live on only gravel, you could consider doing that from the get-go. Or if you're a vehicle where you can't pick between 2 and 4-wheel drive, you know, that could do that as well. As we're sitting right now today, I have roughly 12 or 13, maybe even 1,400 miles on my rear diff, and I have under 100 miles on my front diff. So my rear diff has long been broken in, but my front diff still is not fully broken in. And so I actually made the decision to not drain the fluid on the front diff because it was still basically brand new. And I'm trying to keep track of that sort of on the side as we do this whole process because now what I do is if I go to a gravel road or if I go to a snowy road, I try and track that. So that's the break-in process. It's kind of confusing. The thing that I also kind of didn't fully follow is like all the instructions are kind of vague. They don't talk about certain things. They talk about things in terms of times, which like I get it. If you're traveling at different speeds, like that makes it hard to define a distance. The cooling and heating like sort of phases. It's also hard to talk about if you don't know where the person lives and like how fast their vehicle cools down. I always was of the impression that since I was in Minnesota and I got re-geared in the winter, like it's going to cool down quicker than if you're in, say, Arizona. So, you know, just think through some of those things because your instructions may or may not be kind of vague. The other thing they talk about is like if you're anyone that's going to be towing, you need to do this whole break-in process also with a trailer. So they talk about kind of using like a little bit of a more lighter weight trailer, you know, not to max out your towing capacity. And then you do that whole same thing that I just mentioned. Like I think the first 3 trips, you're supposed to only go up to 45 miles per hour towing and then 60 up to towing. It's hard to say how much all of this is really necessary. But again, I just didn't want to have a ringing diff as I'm driving down the road everywhere I went. So I tried to be really careful of this. So I've got a lightweight trailer that I use in the summers for projects. I'm probably going to hook that up to the 4Runner sometime this spring. Just do a couple of trips with it in 2-wheel drive just to kind of put it through the paces a little just so that it can tow something and kind of break that in if there's any reason or way that would kind of break in the gears a little bit further. So hopefully I touched on everything that would be helpful for you. Your version of that might be pulling an overland trailer. I don't really know, again, if you need to, because most overland trailers are quite light, but it would be something to consider that if you're really trying to be cautious, you might want to go out there and, you know, hook up your overland trailer and do some of this break-in. Again, I didn't see like a particular article or anything on this, but if it were me, that's probably something that I would do. All right, let's jump over to Sidco 4x4. We're going to check out the rear diff fluid because that's the stuff we've hit 500 miles on, and I'm going to show you what it looks like. We're going to talk to Trevor about what he thinks about the rear diff. So let's jump over. All right, guys, so we're back here at Sidco 4x4, and we are doing a little re-gear diff fluid swap. So we're right at about 500 miles here, and we're going to swap the rear diff fluid. We probably could swap the front as well. I'm kind of torn as to whether we should since I drove in 4-wheel drive for like a total of 15 miles, but we might swap both since the fluid's pretty cheap. We'll have to see. So stay tuned. We're going to swap out this fluid.
Come out and looking through it for transparency.
I see.
Less metallic than I had even think in there, you know what I'm saying? You can kind of see it there.
Yeah.
And that's just the break-in. That's what we're looking for. No large particulates. Honestly, the fluid, then again, I mean, it still looks new.
Yeah.
That's good.
And the bluish color comes from
the anodization that they put the gears through in order to seal them for storage. It kind of breaks down and comes off the gears in time, especially between the two faces.
I see.
And that's kind of what leaves that kind of darker color to what used to be kind of more of an amber, oil.
Right. I see. Good deal. All right. Time to put some more fluid in. Okay, let's start talking about fluids. So if you watched my re-gear video, you saw that I made the stupid mistake of running OEM fluids in the front and rear differentials. So if you look at the instructions for your gears, a lot of them will give a good recommendation on what fluids to run. They recommended 80W90. I went out to my local automotive store and I bought some decent mid-shelf 80W90 fluids. I didn't buy anything too crazy, especially because this was the break-in fluid and I was going to be immediately swapping it back out. So you're going to need fluids, and then you're going to need crush washers. You're going to need some new crush washers. So, this is maybe something you don't need to swap every time, but they're pretty cheap. And Amazon, they sell these packs. This is a random, off-brand version, but we've got the transfer case and front and rear diff washers for a 4Runner here. You can buy Toyota OEM ones as well, but I've seen those and they tend to be sold out on Amazon. If you are watching this and you haven't re-geared and you're just curious, but you probably need to do your own diff fluid swap. I know a lot of guys that actually run new diff fluid and transfer case fluid every year just to keep your area nice and pristine. So right here, this is the 75W85. Heard good things about this. This will say on it, this GL5 high performance lubricant for hypoid limited slip differentials. It's my understanding that this gear is required for limited slip differentials, but limited slip differential gear fluid can be used on normal diffs like on the 4Runner. So there you go. This is the stuff that I bought. It's kind of expensive, this red line synthetic oil, and I couldn't use any of it for my rig. So sad. Another thing you can buy is one of these little pumps. You see this here? Kind of fluid. So it's got a little hose you hook up to the end. Here's the hose. And this allows you to pump the fluid in to the front diff, especially because the area where you put fluid in on the clamshell is kind of hard to access. So these are handy. It's pretty annoying though to have to use that. You can buy the fluid in like a 1 quart size container, and they've got this sort of nipple spout. Some even come with like an accordion sort of like styled plastic bendable spout. Those are great because what you do is you fill up a quart, you take it and you just squeeze the bottle as hard as you can. It just forces all the fluid in. It's a lot faster, a lot less effort to fill up your front clamshell when you use a fluid container like that. So yeah, that's basically the break-in process and the fluid that I used. If you've got any questions for me, or you just are wondering like, hey, I did this for my break-in, or I'm looking to get re-geared, do I need to do this? I'll try and answer it based on the research I've done. I'm no expert on this, but I tried to learn as much as I could, and maybe I can point you to a resource or something that you can read, or if you just want to bounce ideas off me, feel free to comment them down below. All right, it's me from the future. So yeah, we just got done talking about the 500-mile break-in process. Now we're going to talk about sort of the tuning that you probably are going to consider doing once you re-gear, because now your vehicle has a different gear set and it probably doesn't quite know how to shift. So the tune really helps with that, but it's also kind of a nice time where you can fix some of the drivability or gear hunting that you may be experiencing on your 4Runner. So let's jump over to Yoda Tune. We're going to talk to Aaron, and he's going to help us get the new tune thrown on the 4Runner that accommodates the 35s and the 488 gears. So let's start talking about that. So you maybe all have seen the original video I posted on getting tuned, and I did that with a company here in Minnesota called Tuned Yoda. They are typically doing a OTT tune, which is based out of Denver. Those are the developers of the tune. Anyways, today, since I recently got re-geared, we're going to be retuning the vehicle to accommodate those new gears, the 35s, and yeah, hopefully it's going to drive a lot better. One thing I just wanted to throw out there before we get into the video is the guy who's helping me tune, he mentioned that if I ever swap up to an AGM battery, they're able to tweak that tune so that your alternator will output the correct voltage to actually charge that AGM battery. So that's kind of cool. Right now I just run, you know, the typical lead acid battery, but in the future I may upgrade. And that's one thing I want to throw out just as another reason to get a tune. A lot of people out there are pretty skeptical of tunes. Right there is a great reason, but we'll talk about a lot more reasons why you're going to want to re-gear. So right now I'm actually in roughly the 100 to 150 mile checkpoint of the 500 mile break-in for the gears. So essentially what I'm trying to do is figure out if driving with the stock gears and your stock computer, you know, thinking it's still running stock gears, but then driving with the new gears, if that's going to help me to drive smoother or not when I'm trying to do the break-in. So typically when you do the break-in, you do 3 heat up and cool down 15 to 20 minute trips at under 45 miles per hour. Then you do the same thing at 65 miles per hour. And then up until 500 miles, you're not really supposed to drive more than 50 miles at a time. So that's kind of the break-in, and you're just supposed to keep it at lower speeds. So your transmission helps in shifting through all your gears and driving correctly. And so I'm just trying to make sure that the truck is driving well, and so that's why I decided to come and get tuned and just see how this whole process goes while you're doing your re-gear break-in and then also getting tuned. So I may end up coming back after my break-in period when I can really step on the gas and get to the higher RPMs, because I might want my tune tweaked a little bit, and that's okay. So Tuned Yoda, once you are purchasing a tune from them, you're kind of a customer for life, and you can come back and get your tune tweaked if you change different configurations on your rig, or you just don't like how it feels and maybe you want it to be slower or faster. They're here for you to help you out with that. So that's what I'm doing. I got it tuned when it was stock. We're tuning during the break-in period. May tune again after the 500 mile break-in. And yeah, we'll get the 4Runner completely dialed. So that all being said, we just got back from the first tune on these new gears, and the idle seemed a little bit low and it wasn't too peppy. It's definitely very smooth still. So what we've done is bump up to the next level kind of aggressiveness in the tune, and we're gonna go from there, take it for a test drive, see how it drives. So stay tuned, we'll be back in a bit. All right, so we just got back from the second trip here. Put on the kind of slower tune first. That was just the medium. Felt quite good, but I think I might want just a little bit more. And when I was tuning the stock 4Runner, we were, you know, basically here, and he said, "You want to try the top tune?" And I was like, "Nah, that felt so nice." And well, that was pretty stupid, because all of a sudden a week later, I'm like, "Yeah, I think I should have tried that top tune." So we're gonna now try the top tune and give that a try, and we'll be back to decide whether that's the tune we keep or maybe we go back to the medium setting.
So one thing I noticed is I ended up going for the second time and the third time. Unfortunately, the audio for some reason didn't record here, but essentially decided to go with the third level of throttle response, and so far I've really enjoyed it. The tune helps the vehicle to shift better. It also helps for just creating that more linear throttle response throughout your RPMs. And so all the benefits of having the tune with stock gears are still there when you have the 488s in my case. One thing I have noticed that I think is due to the tune is a lot of times this tune actually limits your ability to like rev bomb. So if you're on the highway and you're trying to pass a car or something, if you try and floor it, it's going to fight you a bit, and it's going to try and have a linear rev up. So depending upon your drive style, this OTT tune seems to limit you a little bit there. I'm not quite sure if maybe using a throttle, controller in addition to this tune would fix this. But it's something I'm probably going to talk to Aaron about, because now that I've re-geared the vehicle, I probably need to go back and get retuned again, because now I'll punch it, a little bit harder, and I've been noticing this sort of throttle response. Before, I drove as smooth as I possibly could, and it never mattered because I was never putting the pedal down far enough for this sort of thing to occur. So these are just some of my observations, and we're going to continue to test everything out. But so far, the tune has been, I think required in some ways, just because of the fact that the vehicle is going to be shifting based on the stock gears, and it's incorrect. So thanks again, Tuned Yoda, and yeah, that was my experience.
All right, well, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I think the regear process is a bit daunting, and I wouldn't necessarily try and do this myself. It does take some technical knowledge. It takes a lot of really, non-practical tools, in my opinion, to have around the shop. I mean, we used a hydraulic press, we used a torch, we used a couple other things throughout the whole process of doing the regear, and it's just hard to do something like that in your own garage. Kudos to some of you guys out there that have done it yourself. So I was really happy Sidco 4x4 was able to help me out with this, and a big shout out to Running for Tacos again for helping me get these gears. And I also really want to give a shout out to Yoda Tuned. They're an awesome tuning company here in the Midwest, and they tune a lot of Toyotas. They're primarily delivering the OTT tune. I think they're Overland Taylor tuning, but it's the Overland Torque tune. And I've liked it so far on the 4Runner. So yeah, again, thank you all for watching my content. Lately, videos have been doing quite well, and I really appreciate it. It's been a nice start to 2023. Got some awesome content coming. Plus, some Land Cruiser content's going to be coming this spring, so I'm really excited for that. I've had it parked because the winters here are horrible on vehicles, and I've been working on some mods in the background on it. So that content will be coming back very soon, and yeah. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate the support, and I will catch you all in the next video.